All right. Hey, YouTube, I'm Lucky, and today is Thursday, and so it's time to cover the big Bungie news. This week at Bungie, they're covering weapon crafting and the weapon sandbox tuning that they're going to be doing with the Witch Queen. This is a huge one. Go ahead and buckle up. First up, they're going to go over Bungie and PlayStation partnered together, $3.6 billion deal, etc. Over 1 million people have pre-ordered the Witch Queen. Definitely exciting stuff. Now let's get into the interesting stuff. Welcome to the Enclave. So this is going to be where you're going to go to first make your glaive. And after you've made that, you'll actually be able to go there and adjust traits on your weapons. And basically, what this would work like to sort of dumb it down from what I'm understanding is like almost like a sixth perk on your weapon. Right now, you have like five, you'd have like a sixth perk, and they go over it in further detail later, and I'll cover that. And that perk is basically just called a trait. There's like an origin trait, and you can enhance certain traits on the weapon, which sounds crazy. I mean, I can't even imagine what it'd be like enhancing like kill clip on a weapon, but they mentioned enhancing traits, which sounds nuts right here with enhanced traits. And I'm really just excited to see how this plays out overall because it sounds like it's going to be every weapon is going to be very unique and very customizable. Right now, obviously, we have weapons that are randomly rolled, and no two weapons seem to really be the same, and the chances of getting two of the same weapon are very slim. But this would make it even more crazy because you would get a very rare weapon, a very unique roll, and then you could change and adjust some things and have some unique traits depending upon where you got that weapon from. Definitely seems exciting. And then we go over mementos, which is first going to activate with Gambit. And this looks like while the majority of your crafting experience will be dedicated to mixing, matching, and enhancing traits, there is also an opportunity for a bit of customization when it comes to appearances and activity-specific trackers. So you'll be able to change a little bit this. First, it'll be out with Gambit, and then later it's going to come out with Trials and Grandmaster Nightfalls with mementos. Then they talk about exotic crafting, and this sounds pretty crazy to me. In fact, I'm just going to read this paragraph right here because this thing is nuts. While legendary weapons can be crafted from the ground up, exotic crafting is more about fine-tuning something with a defined identity. You may have the opportunity to customize things like barrels or stocks while preserving the exotic look and feel, looking for a longer range profile for the weapon, or opting to shred through your enemies up close and personal. Through the Enclave, you can do just that. That sounds crazy. So even every exotic in Destiny 2 would be able to be finely tuned. This is changing everything. I mean, every exotic right now, minus the Hawk Moon and like the Dead Man's Tail, is like the exact same. This will really mix up the game in Destiny 2. It'll be very crazy. Now it would be like god rolls of every exotic weapon. Sheesh. All right. Tuning up, tuning down, and tuning all around. So I'm going to summarize a lot of this for you because this is basically just a lot of jargon that has to do with the history of pinnacle and ritual weapons. Basically, in the beginning, they made a bunch of pinnacle weapons like Mountaintop and Recluse and a variety of other ones. And they were just too strong, and so they decided to move away from that, move to more ritual weapons. And what they do now with ritual weapons, and they literally clarify this, which was really fun to read, but they have the ritual weapon, which is like an 8 out of 10 god roll, but then they'll also have another weapon that you could farm for, grind for, that would be, you could get a 10 out of 10 god roll, essentially. And so a good example would be, I don't know, the Ascendancy Rocket is a decent one. It is the explosive light perk, but you could go for the Hothead, which obviously would be able to slot in adept big ones on that, and you could have explosive light but pair it with something else. So some really good options there, and I think it's a cool system that they've been doing, something that I mentioned a long time ago, where they're allowing you to get basically a god roll or the best version of the weapon, close enough to the best version, and then you can also chase the carrot on the stick and get a slightly better version if you want to be that much more hardcore in Destiny, which a lot of us are. Moving on to the next part, they talk about the Reckless Endangerment Pursuit Shotgun. So they're bringing back this. This is going to be the Pursuit Shotgun you're going to chase for. It's going to have origin traits, and it was talking about a perk that gave it like crazy handling and stuff like that. So it'll be really exciting to see right here. They read, this weapon is coming in Season 16 and introduces the new Steady Hands perk for a massive handling boost after a kill, plus Snapshot. So, wow, that could be a pretty fun shotgun to use and run around with. Then they move on to, we're going to the next part. This is origin traits. Now, this is a really big section that I want to cover because each weapon is going to have a different origin trait. There's 14 different ones right now, and then there's going to be more with future seasons, so keep that in mind. But this is essentially like this like sixth perk almost on these weapons. So like Trials weapons, not in the past, they won't be given these, but Trials weapons in the future will he'll have the option with like, it's called Alacrity. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Gained increased reload stability, aim assist, and range while you're the last living member of your fire team or running solo. So that sounds pretty crazy. Can you imagine that? Um, and this does work in Lost Sectors or Rumble. So that's really cool to see a perk that works for solo. Nightfall Strikes is going to have this origin trait with Stunning Recovery. Stunning a champion partially refills your magazine, triggers health regeneration, and improves recovery for a short duration. Crucible, One Quiet Moment strikes. Vanguard Vindication. I mean, there's just a bunch of these origin traits. There's 14 in total, and these are going to come on every weapon, depending upon where that weapon came from. And some of them will have two different options, depending upon if they, came from a certain area but are within a certain playlist and stuff like that. Or maybe all of them will have two different options. I'm not sure the exact details of how many different origin trait options there are, but it seems really exciting, and that will add a ton of power to the newer weapons, making the older weapons a little more not as exciting, I guess. Weapon Foundries then has this entire like speech from Banshee here, and they talk about hand cannons, pulse rifles, Omlon, Hake. You're gonna have a ball, so we've got a bunch of weapons being brought back, reprised. They're gonna have new perks, and then obviously they're gonna have the origin traits on them. So that's gonna be really exciting stuff. So keep that in mind. We have the Foundry origin trait, and like for example, Suros will have Suros Synergy. Reloading grants this weapon bonus handling and reduces incoming flinch for a short duration. That's wild. So that will just be an intrinsic trait on like a Suros weapon, like the hand cannon, for example. Um, Hake will have its own intrinsic or Foundry origin traits. Omlon as well. Vice, really exciting stuff to see, and this just makes all of the weapons in Destiny 2 that much more unique and customizable and more fun to farm for. Like it's already been a really fun and interesting thing to chase after god rolls. Obviously, it's one of my favorite passions. If you know you're subscribed here, it's going to be even crazier with all this stuff because now you're going to have the ability to choose a certain origin trait within the weapon. Moving on to the next part here, we've got the Vanguard. We're going to do a slug shotgun this season. We're going to have the hand cannon. I think this might be the Ufern. And then they have an auto rifle from Gambit. So those are going to be the playlist exclusive weapons. Moving on to those, we have, this is the example I really wanted to showcase here. We have corkscrew rifling / polygon rifling. So this would be a normal thing for an auto rifle. Armor piercing rounds, flared magwell, that's the magazine. This would be your trait, perpetual motion, focus fire. Those are your two big traits, your two big perks. And then you would have this Gambit origin trait or Hake origin trait, which would be invader tracker or Hake breach armaments. So that's going to add a lot of power and uniqueness to that weapon. Whichever one you decide to use, if you're in Gambit, you probably choose the invader tracker. If you're not, or if you feel like this would be stronger in PvP or PvE, you can use this origin trait. So it's some exciting stuff. And then the kill tracker and then range masterwork all seems pretty normal there. So some pretty exciting stuff overall. Moving on to the next part, they go into a bunch of different patch notes and stuff, things that are getting adjusted. There's definitely some big things in here with you can pick off a special brick for one for shotgun, fusion, or sniper rifle. So this is a really big change because before right now you'd pick up a special brick and you'd get 2 shots for your shotgun or whatever it may be. This is the special ammo nerf that they're trying to do. They're trying to get people away from, spawning in and just using their special ammo weapon a ton. Obviously, it's been a long ongoing effort. I don't know if this will be too far. I don't know if this will make the game like you won't be able to use your special ammo weapon often enough. Who knows? I mean, you spawn in with 2, and then every time you get a kill with 1, they drop 1. So it shouldn't be too bad overall. I think it could make for some pretty well-balanced gameplay. Right now, the sandbox is still a little too heavy with special ammo weapons. They're just so much more potent than primary ammo weapons. We'll see if this ends up changing or shifting the numbers. It'll be interesting to see overall. And then they also do mention kill trackers here. It used to be tied to the masterwork weapon, but now we see no reason to gate these behind masterworking. They'll be present by default on all weapons that shipped in Forsaken and later. And so they're going to be changing that overall. And then they're going into certain archetypes of weapons, and they go through a list of different weapons that are getting reworks and getting changed a little bit. Rocket launchers getting damage adjustment by subfamily precision, high impact, adaptive, aggressive. We go on, sniper rifles are getting adjusted for the low zoom and the high zoom. If you don't know, the high zoom is really, really good. It increases aim assist, like we talked about before. The low zoom, not as crazy, so they're kind of inverting that, flipping those roles. This is a huge one right here. Pulse rifles are taking slightly too long to kill red bar enemies, so they're giving a 10% buff to that. Not only are they giving a 10% buff to that, but also exotic weapons are getting an increased damage versus miners in PvE by 40%. So that's going to be crazy. A 10% buff plus a 40% buff. Now, you might be thinking of some exotic pulse rifles you might want to use in PvE, but the first thing that comes to my mind would be Huckleberry is about to be nuts for clearing ads with a 40% buff to PvE enemies. That might even be like really good for Grandmasters at that point. You might actually be able to keep the uptime of Rampage and the stacks on the Huckleberry. We'll see. Only time will tell, but that's actually really exciting and pretty crazy stuff to see a gigantic damage increase from all primary exotic weapons. Okay, keep that in mind. Exotic primary weapons are they usually you did never use them before. You're almost using your exotic exclusively in the power slot, or maybe Wither Horde, or occasionally. But for now, it's going to be these primary weapons might actually be really good. Chaperone getting a slight nerf, so keep that in mind. Duality getting some change brought to it. Tarba is getting a little buff actually because you couldn't swap with the weapon. They're changing that. Runus Effigy is getting a nice little buff. Lumina is getting a buff as well, along with those other 150 RPMs. They were outdated. We'll cover that in just a moment. But Thorn is not getting a buff. It's already popular enough. Agar Scepter getting some things changed on it. Overall, a good buff and good changes, it seems like. Deadman's Tail is getting a huge nerf. All right. Right now, the hipfire on this is crazy, and they're changing the hipfire from 150 RPM to 130 RPM. So Deadman's Tail won't be quite nearly as potent. Lawrence Driver and Arbalist getting a nerf. They're increasing the flinch, which is good. Forerunner is getting a change brought to its economy. Was fairly conservative when we shipped the 30th anniversary, but having seen how it's used in PvP, we believe it would benefit from getting a little more ammo per special brick. So Forerunner getting a little buff there. And then moving on to legendary weapons like we talked about. These weapons were 150 RPMs. Like, for example, the Dire Promise was a 150. It was brought to a 140. And because of that, its range was like significantly lower than it should have been. So they're giving it +4 to range, and they're removing a little bit of the aim assist on it. Which also, look at how crazy the aim assist was for spare rations. Holy moly. They're taking -9 aim assist off. That thing was nuts back in the day. Fellwinter is getting a nerf, +15% spread angle. They said it's had enough time in the spotlight. That's getting a nerf. And then a buff to Icarus SMGs is going to be pretty crazy overall. Can't wait to see how the sandbox plays with these changes to pellet shotguns, or to Fellwinter, and to slug shotguns, and then slightly buff to, we got SMGs, sidearms. Gameplay might actually be a lot more viable in the current sandbox and in the meta in the future. And then they're going over specific perks and stuff, and these perks get a bunch of crazy good changes overall. I mean, we've got Adagio getting a nice buff because that wasn't nearly that interesting of a perk. Dual Loader getting a buff. Danger Zone not killing you anymore. Tap the Trigger getting a nerf for Fusion specifically because it was too crazy, especially on Xur's Fusion. You all know that. Headseeker getting a buff. They do nerf Eager Edge, which is an interesting play by them. Everyone kind of loves this right now. I did call for a slight nerf maybe in PvP, but they're just going for an across-the-board nerf because it seems like they might be able to get out of the map in the Witch Queen, and they're worried about people just cheesing the new raid, you know, which is a fair complaint or problem from Bungie. So it sucks that Eager Edge gets the nerf, though. That's probably one of the ones that hurts the most out of all of this. Then they talk about occasionally they shelf perks, and some of these perks are getting shelved: Bottomless Grief and Celerity. And they got Underdog, Shield Disorient, and Air Assault's been shelved for a while, but it might be redesigned and brought back in a future season. Some of these perks might come back and be better than ever when they do, so could be exciting to see that. In the near future, in Season 17, they have a set of PvP-focused weapon changes, including new ways for players to build for flinch resistance. Very interesting. So another PvP special ammo economy change, if needed. Season 17 is looking like a PvP-focused season. And that's going to be it for the entirety of this TWAB. Everything else they go over is just small news compared to this. This was huge. I really want to know your thoughts and ideas. I want to see some feedback from you in the comments down below. What do you think about the Enclave, Deep Sight Revenants, the enhanced traits, mementos, exotic crafting, the sandbox tuning for both PvP and PvE, the origin traits, everything. I want to hear your feedback. Let me know which one of these weapons you're most excited for. That's a wrap on this week's TWAB. Make sure to subscribe with notifications on if you did enjoy. Smash the like button. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Later.